Hi, hello, welcome to Anime Garage. Today we are going to recap anime called Overlord Season 1. There's a popular online virtual reality game called Yggdrasil. However, 12 years after Operation Company has decided to shut down its servers, a certain player named Momonga is a guild leader of Ainz Ul Gaon. He's savoring his last few moments in the game before the server shut down. The only other guild member is his dear friend Hirohiro, who is also inside the game. He says his goodbyes to Momonga and logs out, hence leaving Momonga as the only member of the guild still in the game. He loiters around, sits on the throne, and even messes up the setting of a prominent NPC named Albedo. She becomes women in love and gets obsessed with Momonga from here on. This is where things have taken an interesting turn. Even after the time has passed, the servers have shut down, he's still in the game and unable to log out. Furthermore, the NPCs have come to life, meaning every single subordinate in their guild territory came to life. Momonga takes a few moments to fully understand what's going on. Then he asks head butler Sebas to scout what's going on outside Nazarick and sends Albedo to gather the floor guardians. At the Grand Arena of Nazarick, he tests the strength of both the 6th floor guardians, Lady Aura and Mare. They're both twins and have to go up against the primal fire elemental which Momonga summoned to prove their competence. The cute siblings are infatuated by the kindness on their leader. The floor guardians arrive and they're in the presence of their overlord. They kneel and swear their loyalty to Ainz Ul Gaon. This leads Momonga expressing his faith and confidence in them that they'll all sincerely fulfill their duties. He then informs them about how Nazarick is currently caught up in a mysterious situation, and that's when Sebas comes back from his scout and informs Momonga about the Nazarick is surrounded by grasslands instead of the swamps which used to be on the outskirts. Momonga concludes that Nazarick has been mysteriously transported to an unknown land. He asks Albedo and Demiurge to create a strong information-sharing system. He asks them about their thoughts about how to conceal Nazarick from outside threats, and teleports back to his throne. Meanwhile, the floor guardians were overwhelmed in his presence, and after he takes his leave they can't help but praise their leader. Albedo even comments that out of 48 supreme beings, he's the one on top. Looks like it wasn't just Albedo who gets sexually excited in Momonga presence. A vampire named Bloodfallen Shalter is also the same, though Demiurge mentions an interesting idea. Momonga may very well leave them one day as well, so it'd be good insurance to have him declare his successor beforehand. Later, Momonga changes his appearance and decides to go outside, but Demiurge doesn't let him go alone and accompanies him after permission. The beauty of the world outside amazes him, and he kind of casually talks about taking over the world. Demiurge took that word seriously. He then sees Mare exceptionally concealing the walls of Nazarick on his orders and rewards him with one of his rings. Albedo also enters the chat but gets irrationally irritated at the sight of Mare wearing one of those rings, so he presents her with one as well. She is the overseer of the floor guardians after all. As this is going on, we get a glimpse of a group who's about to attack a village. A chief warrior named Gaziv Stranov and his warrior troops came across a plundered village shortly after. He wants the survivors to be sent to the capital Arantel, but the vice captain wonders about the true intention of the attack. Meanwhile, Momonga is using the mirror of remote viewing to look around when sees another village getting ransacked. The ones who are doing so appear to be knights. Now, since Momonga is an undead, he no longer has the same kind of sympathy for other humans, so initially he sees no point of getting involved. Sebas was by his side, looks distressed. This reminds him of a fellow guild member named Touch Me and decides to get involved. Whatever, he was going to eventually test his powers anyway, so he teleports there, saves a young girl and a little girl, then summons a death knight and tasks him to go take care of the situation. Expectedly, Albedo pops up as a knight in shining armor, but her distaste for humans comes through. Anyway, he heals them, and when asked for his name, the man introduces himself as Ainz Ul Gaon, and that's what we'll be calling him from now on. He wears a mask to hide his undead face, helps rid the village of the intruders, posing as a magic caster. He asks the village chief for some information about the new world. That's when the warrior from before Gaziv arrived in the village with his troops. Ainz introduces himself as well as the fact he was the one who protected the village. As you can expect, the warrior sincerely thanks Ainz for his help. But then the entire village gets surrounded by some mysterious figures. We get a little tidbit of a conversion where Negan of the Sunlight Scripture is being tasked with murder of the mightiest warrior in the land, Gaziv Stranov. Present, the entire village is surrounded, and the warrior asks Ainz to help protect the village once again, while he himself will attack the enemies with his troops. Ainz had began to respect the warrior and take him up on his own offer. He also gives him a little souvenir which Gaziv doesn't understand, at least not then. However, as the battle rages on Gaziv, and his troops are overwhelmed by the enemy, when Gaziv encounters the enemy leader and realizes that they'll lose, he warns him, tells him to leave the village alone, because someone even stronger than himself is currently there. The enemy leader casts it aside as a mere bluff, tells his troops to finish off them. But then just before Gazef lost his life, he and his men are suddenly transported to the village because of that souvenir which vanished after doing its job. He instantly realized that it was Ainz who saved them. Ainz and Albedo goes to the battlefield. Within mere moments, Ainz has scared out of their living daylights and asks them to surrender, but their leader doesn't listen and decides to summon his strongest angel. The Dominion Authority, seeing him call that the strongest Severli, disappointed Ainz, but the leader once again thought that it was just bluff and asked the angel to attack. Unexpectedly, it does barely end up scratching Ainz, which leads Albedo getting mad with rage. He asks her to calm down and then makes the angel disappear using a black hole. The enemy has no cards left whatsoever and beg for forgiveness, but it was time they suffered the consequences. All of them get annihilated. Albedo, woman in love, is beyond thrilled seeing how cool her master is following this event, returns back home. He officially renames himself after the name of their guild, then asks his subordinates to spread his name across the new world. Though Guardians kind of misunderstand his words and realize that it's time to take over the world. Later, when Albedo is reporting to Ainz, Shalter comes in and has her usual scuffle with Albedo. She then informs Ainz that she's leaving for a mission and just wanted to pay her regards. Following these, Ainz and the battle-mate Nabaro pose as adventurers and enter the city of Arantel. He beats Yupagun in a bar and accidentally breaks a lady's precious potion, so he compensates by giving her a red one. Then, as the two are alone in the room, they discuss their plan to learn more about the new world as adventurers. He'll be calling himself Mammon, while Nabaro will be Nabe. So now they have to get themselves a job as adventurers, while the girl who got the potion takes it to a shop and realizes that it's a ridiculously rare potion. The owner of the workshop even tells her grandson to go and discover that adventurer. Back at the Adventurers Guild, Mammon and Nabe partner up with an adventurer that calls itself Swords of Darkness. They were going to go with their quest, but then someone asked Mammon specifically and Ghoul changes. The Ghoul is now to escort Nefria Barrett to Karn Village, the one Ainz saved back then. The client also happened to be grandson of that workshop owner. Their journey to Karn Village begins. Meanwhile, there is a sinister individual named Clementine at the Irantel Cemetery, who meets up someone Kajiat and they talk about some strange ritual. On their travels, the party is attacked but quickly takes care of everything. It doesn't take long before these Swords of Darkness realize that they re-traveling with some extraordinary individuals. Mammon and Nabe's strength was seconds to none. Nabe's insults can be too much, though not one of them is a masochist and loves getting degraded by a lady as beautiful as her. Eventually, they all set up a campfire and share stories. Mammon also talks about his former fellows. There's this sense of nostalgia, but one of them talks about how he'll meet them again someday. He gets irritated and leaves the campfire. Nabe follows. Of course, the others deduce that his comrades are probably gone. This makes them feel guilty, but when they talk about strength, all of them can agree that Mammon is an adventurer of the highest tier, on the same level as an adamantine adventurer. While back at Arantel, those two strangers from before are preparing undead minions to take over the city. Coincidentally, Clementine is waiting for Nefria, who is currently with Mammon and others, to return to the capital. As for Mammon and his new group, they finally arrive at Karn Village after one pleasant journey, and the woman who was saved by Ainz back then welcomes them in. There's also Goblin troop that protects the village. They were summoned using the Horn of the Goblin General, which was given to Henry by Ainz back then. She doesn't know Mammon is Ainz, but talks about Ainz and how he used red potion to heal her back then. This causes Nefria to deduce Mammon is Ainz because it was the same red potion that was brought to their workshop. He talked about it, Mammon, although Mammon tells him not to talk about it. It's secret. Soon enough, they start gathering the herbs which Nefria wanted for their workshop. While Mammon is on his way to make the rumored wise king of the forest his pet, it was easier than it sounded. Just like that, a monstrous wild hamster is reduced to a humble pet. His name was Hamsuk. Once again, everyone is surprised by what Mammon can do. The team finally returns to Arantel, while Swords of Darkness help with the herbs at the workshop. Mammon and Nabe goes and register Hamsuk as a member, but then unfortunately Clementine appears at Nefria's residence in order to abduct him. The Swords of Darkness try to protect Nefria but get brutally killed by her. It's a nightmare. While back at the Adventurers Guild, Nefria's grandmother guides Mammon and Nabe back to their house only for them to see the dead bodies of their former comrades turned into zombies. Unfortunately, was nothing he do then he had to kill them off to put them out of their misery, though Mammon couldn't help but to get to the root of this. He asked the grandmother to hire them so that he and Nabe can go retrieve her grandson. She accepted. So he asks Nabe to discover his location and to find out the existence of a humongous undead army by the cemetery. Mammon asks the grandmother to warn everybody about it. That undead army is trying to destroy the gates to the capital to get in. It's a dire situation as the soldiers can't do anything. That is Mammon and Nabe arrive. They take care of the situation and go to encounter the ringleaders. Mammon asks Snape to take care of Codget while he goes up against Clementine. Both of them don't even need to fight seriously. Hamsook is on standby. Codget boasts about how he has absolute resistance up to the 6th-tier magic, but gets both him and his dragon summons absolutely destroyed by Snape. Mammon is causally fighting Clementine, which severely agitates her because he's not taking fights seriously. So she stabs him in both of his eyes, and that's when Mammon reveals his true existence as an undead overlord. He insults her that she was defeated by a magic caster who didn't even use any magic. He crushes her body and kills her. They rescue Nephria and destroy the ritual as well. The entire kingdom is saved. Back at the guild, they are promoted. Going back in time, we see Sebas and maid named Solution Epsilon staying at an inn disguised as nobles from Baharuth Empire. They had a human slave who sold them to a mercenary group. They both then take a carriage ride with Shaltir and her 2 vampire girls. They had a conversation about their respective guild members, but a disturbance outside disturbs their ride. It's a group aided by their former human slave. One of them tries to touch Shaltir's chest, but gets his hand and head cut off. This is where Shaltir and Sebas go their separate ways. She goes after the bandits while Sebas goes back capital for information. Eventually, she reaches a cave where resides a man named Brian Unglass. He challenges her to a fight but gets absolutely ridiculed. Furthermore, Shaltir takes her true vampire form and destroys all of them. Then she comes across adventures. One of them is that woman who got that red potion from Mammon. This catches her interest. She hypnotizes her and asks her about the potion, and after receiving the information, she decides to leave her alive as it's probably in accordance with her master's wishes. Though what upset Shaltir was how another one of them was stationed nearby and he might have fled back to the capital. She summons vampire wolves to go after that adventurer, but unexpectedly they all killed by black scripture. This in turn leads to Shaltir meeting a new foe. It's a group of adventurers who work in coherence to take over Shaltir's mind. They succeed, but right before she lost her senses, she kills the Wilder and her bodyguard. Hines had returned to Nazarick, and he realized that it's not as much as rebellion but mind control. He receives a report from Nabarro that the Adventurers Guild has summoned him. It's about the Shaltir situation as well. Mammon attends the meeting back at Irontoul. There are 3 other adventurers who have the same rank as Mammon, and their goal is to take care of the vampire. Mammon comes up with a story and tells them that he's familiar with that vampire and was already trying to hunt it. Reveals that he had a crystal that allows him to use 8-tier magic. Makes it clear that he seeks to deal matter by himself. Everyone takes his word, except Ajavarj, who wants his group to accompany Mammon. He accepting though while they're on their way and gets killed by Mare in cruel manner. Then Ines and Albedo approach Shaltir. Ines uses a ring to undo the spell but fails, though seeing how it had failed, Ines suddenly transport them to somewhere safer. This causes Albedo to ask why they fled, but Ines was rather upset, however instantly clams down. Then talks with Albedo why any magic didn't work. It's because the mind control was caused by a world item. This surprised Ines as he had no idea there were world items in the new world. So they go back in order to retrieve some world items from their treasury. Another battle mate named Yuri Alpha accompanies them, the guardian of the treasury, Pandora's actor. He was kind of difficult to communicate with. They then enter the mausoleum, where there are golden statues after each supreme being. Ines was the one who created them as a memorial for their comrades. Following this, he also mentions how one day there will be a statue of him as well. Albedo gets sentimental as this implies that he'll eventually leave them as well. She begs him to stay with them forever, but Ines wasn't making any promises. It'll be her responsibility to lead and protect Nazarick when he is not around. As for Shaltir, he intends to take her on all by himself. He arrives at the site together with Aura and Mare. He asks the 2 siblings to scout the area and make sure no one else gets involved, both of them given world items. Meanwhile, in Nazarick, Demiurge returns to Nazarick, and then in the presence of Albedo and Cocytus, he asks them what's going on. He's already got it because of Albedo's message. He criticizes Albedo for letting him go alone and how there's a possibility that he might get eliminated. So he decides to go after him but gets stopped by Cocytus, who is tasked with making sure nobody interferes. Back at the site, Ines approaches Shaltir, who is standing. He uses all sorts of enhancement spells there were, and eventually Shaltir uses her Valkyrie armor. The battle begins and 2 don't really hold back, especially Shaltir. Soon enough she begins to gain the upper hand, but Ines easily countered everything. Finally she summons Einherjar, a body double, and that increases the scale of her attack. Ainz defeats the double but gets his mana drain. She prepares herself for a final blow and asks Ainz if he has any last words, but Ainz tells her that everything is going according to his plan. The battle enters his final phase. With each exchange, Shalter loses her cool, but as they both hear a beat from Ainz' watch, he declares that the battle is over. He suddenly activates a high-tier magic spell with Shalter in the center. She lands a killing blow on Ainz, but gets distracted midway because of spell from Aura and ends up her life from attack. Ainz then returns back to Nazarick and makes preparations for a resurrection ritual, and then asks the floor guardians remain cautious that she might be under the mind control. Ainz resurrects her. Fortunately, she doesn't have any memories of what happened in last 5 days. Of course, her chest became a washboard. Everyone was genuinely elated by her. Ainz couldn't help but feel nostalgic about the entire thing and reminisce about his time with his friends. He tells not to worry about anything and he bears everything upon him. The very fact that one of them got mind-controlled is a testament to the existence of foe that poses a threat to Nazarick. Ainz wasn't quite thrilled about it. He tells everyone that they need to strengthen their forces. Albedo reports that there is a great lake wherein lizard men dwell. Time passes by Neba Company's Nephria and his grandmother to Karn Village. Later back at Adventurers Guild, Mamon's team promote to Adamantine, which is the highest rank there is. This is end of Season 1 and see you in Season 2.